Chapter 571, Unexpected Encounter at the Airport. The time zipped by, and a few days passed. The news of the death of the Yao family's patriarch, Yao Qingzuan, was eventually made known to the whole city. However, the Yao family did not announce to the outside that he was killed or that he suicided. Instead, it was announced that he died of an illness for the sake of keeping the family's face. The highest authority leaders of the state eventually chose to remain silent, though they had vague hopes that the Tang family wouldn't move excessively again. As for Tang Xiu, he hadn't left the capital yet, but all the people from the Everlasting Feast Hall had already left. Tang Xiu was on Wangfujing Street and was smoking while watching the shops on both sides of the street. Inside his mind, he was imagining Yao Qingzuan's funeral service conducted by the Yao family today. He didn't attend it, but his grandfather did. "Brother, that kiddo Chu Yi invited us to drink, won't you go?" Tang Wei had been following Tang Xiu like a dog skin plaster that couldn't be removed. He said that he wished to gain more experience, learning Tang Xiu's skills by following him. He was even eager to find a way to enter Shanghai University and study together with Tang Xiu. If it wasn't for Tang Xiu forbidding him from doing so, he would have really gone to Shanghai University to hang around with him. "I won't go, Ring, ring, ring." Tang Xiu was about to respond when the ringtone of his mobile phone interrupted him. "I'm not in the mood to drink." After Tang Xiu finished the sentence, he took out his mobile phone and answered the call. "Is there something up, Kong Xia?" "Boss, there are two things. One is great, and the other is okay-ish. Which one do you want to hear first?" Kong Xia's cheerful laugh came from the phone. "Gimme the great one first," answered Tang Xiu. "The great news is that I'm finally able to sense the flow of qi inside my body," Kong Xia cheerfully replied. "It's really warm and makes me comfortable. Also, I can control the flow of qi now." "That's great." Tang Xiu's eyes lit up. "This is really great news. Continue working hard to catch up with Andy." "No problem." Kong Xia laughed. "Now I'll tell you the second thing. Our healthcare products have been completely distributed. We're just waiting for the official sales to begin tomorrow." "That's right, my plane will take off at 3 p.m. and I should arrive in Shanghai before 5. Tang Xiu was stunned. It was already the end of the month and was also the day scheduled for the magnificent Tang Corp's healthcare products to enter the market. After hesitating for a moment, he then said, "I'm still in Beijing handling some important matters." "All right. I'll immediately return to Shanghai, but I'm afraid I'll be a bit later than you. Anyhow, go to the Blue Star Villa complex after you arrive and wait for me there." "All right," Kong Xia replied with a laugh. After hanging up, Tang Xiu looked at Tang Wei and said, "There's something up, so I have to go back to Shanghai. The matters here have been dealt with, more or less, so I won't come back to Beijing for the time being if there are no particularly important issues. Our family hasn't publicized that information yet." "You sure you don't want to see the outcome?" asked Tang Wei hesitantly. "I've already foreseen it," said Tang Xiu. "I don't understand politics, neither do I have interest in paying attention to it. Besides, the 3 grandfathers and the elders of our family are here to take charge of the family's affairs, and I think they can handle it well. However, there are some matters about you that I haven't talked to you yet, but I think it's time I talk about it now." "Issues that related to me? What is it?" asked Tang Wei curiously. "The number of our Tang family's members is nearly twice that of the Yao family's, yet the number of our members engaging in politics is less than theirs. Once Grandpa and the other grandfathers completely handle over their authorities to our uncles, then it is necessary and imperative to foster successors from our generation. I think you should take this path for the sake of yourself and also for our family's sake, securing adequate rights to speak for the Tang family in this country in the future. But I really don't like politics and becoming a government official." Tang Wei was silent for a moment before replying with a forced smile. "It doesn't matter if you dislike it now. You can gradually grow your interest in it, said Tang Xiu with a chuckle. The Tang family has defeated the Yao family, and our family will have a much greater right to speak in China after this. With the aid of the elders, I'm sure you'll be able to climb up smoothly, becoming a rising star in the political world and turning into a big figure in politics in the future. You won't be able to realize how wonderful the taste of having power and privileges until you have them. But when you really have full control over the power, you will then understand how advantageous it would be to have them. Give me some time. Let me think about it well, answered Tang Wei, albeit reluctantly. All right, no problem. Tang Xiu laughed. In the afternoon, Tang Xiu went to his grandfather's place before rushing to the airport. He randomly found a place to sit and quietly waited, since there was an hour left before his flight took off. Hello, are you Mr. Tang Xiu? As Tang Xiu was thinking about reading a book to kill his boredom, a middle-aged man in a suit appeared before Tang Xiu. He looked like someone with authority and was followed by 4 airport staff. I am. And you are? Asked Tang Xiu. I'm a staff of the airport, Mr. Tang. The middle-aged man quickly replied. We received a call from Mr. Tang Wei and learned from him that you're taking a flight to Shanghai from our airport. Also, I have taken the initiative to help you reserve a first-class cabin. If you would like to, please follow me to the VIP lounge. What's happening here? Tang Xiu's eyes blinked before he finally accepted the good intentions of the other party. Inside the VIP lounge. The room had a very comfortable environment and the seats here were made of leather. The staff of the airport served tea for Tang Xiu because of the special care urged by the middle-aged man. Tang Xiu called Tang Wei and then learned from him that the son of the highest official of Shanghai Airport was his childhood and best friend. All these arrangements were his doing. Go. Go. Hurry up. We'll be all right after we come inside. A hurried voice was heard as 2 figures rushed into the VIP lounge. Huh? Tang Xiu looked up and saw that one of the 2 people was unexpectedly an acquaintance. Zhang Xinya. At the moment, Zhang Xinya looked shaken, as she quickly walked to the corner before taking a seat on the sofa. Following that, she patted her chest and spoke to her agent. That was really awful and scary. Those fans outside were crazy, and I didn't think that the airport staff would have such an intense fervor, too. I'm never going out again later without a disguise. You're a very famous superstar now, Xinya. Especially after that recent single hit, Sleeping Beauty, became so popular. Her manager laughed. It has been occupying the topmost ranking of the major music charts, and with 4 to 5 times more votes than the second place at that. The number of fans who like you is also in the constant rise. You can expect to get more and more popular in the future, even if you are abroad. Becoming a bit more popular is all right, but I'm afraid that it will no longer be convenient for me to do anything later. Zhang Xinya forced a wry smile. Sometimes I really want to drop this superstar identity, I meant it. I too want to do something I want to do and see some people I want to see as well. The manager smilingly replied, the things you want to do and the person you want to see of all people must be Mr. Tang, right? This time, the magnificent Tang Corporation is releasing their new products on the market and you even rushed to Shanghai for this occasion. Isn't it because you want to see whether he's going to the product's exclusive store in Shanghai? Don't talk nonsense, will you? Zhang Xinya hastily pulled her manager's arm and quickly pulled her down. On the nearby sofa, Tang Xiu could clearly hear their dialogue, but the content of the following conversation made him stare with a blank expression. Zhang Xinya wants to see me? But if she wants to see me, isn't it better to call me directly? Why should she go to an exclusive store that sells the magnificent Tang Corp's healthcare products? But, how would Tang Xiu know the reserved thoughts of a woman, to begin with? After hesitating for a moment, however, he still felt that he should greet Zhang Xinya since she was going to Shanghai as well. It was highly likely that she would have the same flight as him. "Hello beauty, may I invite you to a cup of coffee?" Tang Xiu walked toward Zhang Xinya and spoke. Zhang Xinya, who currently had her head lowered and was chatting with her manager, then heard a man's voice. She looked up and directly refused with a stern voice, "I'm sorry, I don't." However, she only finished half of sentence before pausing, because the man standing in front of her was the one she was always dreaming about. "How are you here, Tang Xiu?" Zhang Xinya suddenly got up and called with excitement all over her face. "I'm going back to Shanghai." Tang Xiu smilingly said, "But you, how are you in Beijing?" "I came here to attend a talk show and just finished today. I'm also heading to Shanghai now." The excitement on Zhang Xinya's face didn't fade away as she replied, "By the way, is your flight at 4 p.m., by chance?"
"Yeah."
Tang Xiu smiled. "Then we have the same flight," said Zhang Xinya, pleasantly surprised. Tang Xiu smiled and was pulled by her. After they sat down, he said, "I never thought that we would have such a fate to meet again in the airport, Xinya. It's been twice already meeting in the airport." "That's right, your new single seems very popular recently. I always see its advertisement with your picture on it everywhere, no matter if it's in Shanghai, Beijing, or even in Jingmen Island. It is very popular, but I can't still be compared with you." She laughed. "You can be considered as a big superstar yourself now."
"Ah."
"Please don't make fun of me." Tang Xiu waved his hand. "Besides, my fame is gradually dropping, but it's a result I'm happy to have, though." Zhang Xinya knew perfectly well Tang Xiu's low-key disposition, so she let out a chuckle and said, "Care to go out with me and have a walk together? I assure you that your popularity will soar again tomorrow." "Nope, forget it." Tang Xiu hastily waved his hand. "Don't bring any harm to me, okay? I'm just a good-looking guy who loves a peaceful and serene life." This accidental encounter made Tang Xiu and Zhang Xinya take a plane and arrive in Shanghai together. Tang Xiu even took the same ride as Zhang Xinya and only separated from her after arriving at the urban area. Originally, she wanted to invite Tang Xiu to dinner, but Tang Xiu declined her offer because Kong Xia was still waiting for him at Blue Star Villa complex. But he promised to have dinner with her tomorrow night. After returning to Blue Star Villa complex, he then saw Kong Xia, who had apparently put on a light makeup that made her look very beautiful. She seemed more mature than usual, as she gave off a particular amorous feeling. Despite being accustomed to seeing a lot of femme fatale, Tang Xiu's index finger was somewhat still stirred upon seeing her. Chapter 572, The New Godfather. Tang Xiu, however, was not the kind of juvenile who would raise his gun whenever he saw a beautiful woman. Though he had taken both Kong Xia's heart and flesh, he was still able to keep the urge in check with his strong will. After suppressing the passionate heat surging up inside him, he gave her a gentle hug, and his simple sentence of, "Thanks for your laborious hard work," made Kong Xia feel extremely warm inside. Long Jinglin also came, but he didn't come with me. After separating herself from Tang Xiu, Kong Xia spoke with a content and happy smile. Tang Xiu pondered for a moment before smilingly said, "He has a share of the healthcare products, so it's natural that he's being prudent about it. This guy is always wanting to prove himself and his ability to his father so he can hold his head high at home. How come it can be counted as holding his head up high?" Kong Xia laughed. "He's practically holding on your thigh, or else how could he perform such an achievement, to begin with?" While pulling her to the sofa, Tang Xiu shook his head and said, "You can't say that. Though he hasn't displayed any great achievements, nor showed his great talent for years, his brain is still very useful. If he hadn't come up with the idea of making a formulated medication drink, I'm afraid that I wouldn't even realize that there's wealth contained in health products. Sometimes, even an idea can bring great wealth in and of itself." "What you say makes sense." Kong Xia nodded and smilingly said. "However, our company has too few categories of products, only 4 products in total, including the healthcare products. How about racking up your brains again and developing several more products for our company? Tang Xiu's face scrunched up before slowly replying, speaking about that, there's another opportunity to make money, and it will definitely rack up a huge profit, too. However, this product cannot be used by ordinary people, and the target consumers must be people who are at the top of the pyramid of the haves either domestically or overseas. What kind of product is it? Kang Xia's expression slightly changed and rapidly asked. I'll refine a number of medicinal pills that can increase the life expectancy of ordinary people. However, the quantity of these medicinal pills will inevitably not be many, and the increased lifespan for old people won't be too long. Kang Xia abruptly jumped up from the sofa and asked with a shocked expression, can you really refine such a medicine that can increase the lifespan of old people, boss? How long is not too long, exactly? I'm indeed able to refine it, and the increased lifespan would be about 2 years, answered Tang Xiu. Kang Xia gasped, as she took a deep breath and said with all seriousness, what exactly is the time to take that medication? Is it to be taken directly or at the point of death? At the point of death. Tang Xiu said with a light smile. Also, there's another advantage if they take the medicine when they still have a few years to live, since it can nurse the health of their bodies, and they will feel the state of their body to be at least in the same condition as they were 10 years ago. An ecstatic look painted Kang Xia's face as she asked with excitement, what about the quantity? How many of this medicinal pills can you refine, exactly? Tang Xiu thought for a while before extending his hand and saying, producing 200 pills in a year shouldn't be a problem. And the base price? How much do you plan to sell it for? Asked Kang Xia again. I've thought about this issue as well. People who are going to die won't think much about money, so I think it won't be a problem for the medicine to be priced at 100 million yuan each, answered Tang Xiu. 200 million. This will be the base price. Kang Xia clapped. I dare say that if the effect of this medicine is really like what you explained, let alone 200 million yuan, I'm afraid that some will even be willing to buy it for 1 billion. Not only that, they will crazily scrape up as much money as they can to come up with a way to get it. After giving it a thought, Tang Xiu nodded and smilingly said, 200 million yuan it will be, then. By the way, this item is a product of limited quantity. And if it is sold really well, we can throw it to a large auction to be auctioned. At this time, Kang Xia's eyes showed how much emotion she was feeling at this moment. She not only fell in love with him but also worshipped him to the point that it was difficult to increase again. Prior to this, she only thought that there would be no youngster who could be more excellent than Tang Xiu, but now she thought that no one under the sky could be better than him. I'm not hungry right now. She suddenly sat on Tang Xiu's thigh and directly hugged his neck as her sensual red lips whispered to his ear. Tang Xiu was slightly stunned. He was immediately aware of the meaning of her actions. The impulse he had just suppressed surged up again, and it was much stronger than a moment ago. Then, let's relax and loosen up. Tang Xiu carried her up the stairs. A few short breaths later, he appeared in the bedroom with Kang Xia on his lap as they fell on the king-sized bed. On the first floor. The housemaid, Zhang Xinlan, wearing her apron, walked out of the kitchen and was about to open her mouth to call Tang Xiu and Kang Xia for dinner. When she found that there was no one in the living room all of a sudden, she looked confused and murmured, "Where are they?" "Huh? I just heard them chatting in the living room, how come there's no one in the blink of an eye?" She wandered around in the living room for a short while. After she was sure that Tang Xiu and Kang Xia were not there, she shook her head with a distressed expression and sighed inwardly, "Hey, I'm already in my late 40s, could it be that I'm already senile? They were obviously chatting here in this living room just now, but how come there's no one here now?" She hesitated before going to the second floor. When she arrived at the door of the bedroom where Tang Xiu usually lived, she then heard moaning sounds from the inside. A slightly awkward and embarrassed look appeared on her face, and she quickly retreated. 2 hours later, after Tang Xiu took a shower, changed his clothes and appeared on the first floor, There was an unusual expression in Zhang Xinlan's eyes when she looked at Tang Xiu, as she let out a smile and said, "Mr. Tang, the meal is already cold. I didn't know when you wanted to eat, so I didn't warm it up. Would you like me to reheat the food now?" Tang Xiu replied with a smile, "Then I'll have to trouble you." "It's all right. This is what I should do," said Zhang Xinlan, quickly replied with a smile while waving her hand. Shortly after, Tang Xiu took the food to the bedroom on the second floor and looked at Kong Xia, who looked like a kitty lazily leaning on the bedhead with a smile on the corner of her mouth. He walked over and smiled at her, saying, "Do you want to get down from the bed to eat, or do you want to have the meal on the bed? How about you feed me?" replied Kong Xia with a sweet smile. Cough, cough. Tang Xiu had never fed a woman before, but he finally complied after seeing Kong Xia looking so seductive and tempting with a nightgown so revealing that it opened at the cleavage, revealing her proud peaks. In the next morning, as Tang Xiu woke up from his sleep, he found that Kong Xia's figure had already disappeared from the bedside. This discovery made him secretly vigilant. After all, Kong Xia left the bed without him being aware of it by his present strength. This meant that his vigilance and alertness was getting worse. After washing his face and rinsing his mouth, Tang Xiu walked downstairs. He knew that Kong Xia made breakfast on the first floor by herself. Though the breakfast was simple, both of them wolfed it down happily. After they finished eating, they left the task to clean up the tableware to the housemaid and then went together to the exclusive store of the healthcare products. Italy, somewhere in the suburbs of Rome, inside a grand and magnificent manor which was the Tsubwa clan's headquarters. As of today, the entire Tsubwa clan was drowned in a grieving atmosphere, and the clan's armed force on garrison duty employed an extremely tight guard duty. In the deepest part of the manor, inside the tens of meters high old castle, Druffet was wearing pajamas and comfortably sitting on the chair in the guest hall. Next to the tea table in front of him were two beautiful white girls dressed in transparent white gauze sitting on the floor, making tea and cutting cigars. At present, Druffet could be said to have obtained what he had been dreaming of and was elated with success. He only spent a short 3 days to take full control of the authority in the clan after carrying out a frantic blood purge. All the high-level members of the Tsubwa clan, as well as the armed forces leaders, had all submitted to him. In other words, he was now a great figure who possessed hundreds of billions of dollars in wealth, someone who could stamp his feet to create an earthquake in Italy. "Godfather, Spender from the Parlamento Italiano is here visiting." A stocky man walked through the door, came before Druffet and whispered. Druffet's expression moved. Spender was a figure of real authority over the national parliament, and someone whose voice was regarded highly in the country, along with a huge force that backed him from behind. He was probably not at all inferior compared to the Tsubwa clan. "I'll see him in person." A few minutes later, Druffet saw Spender. The man was tall and thin and looked slightly aged. His eyes, however, were exceptionally bright, revealing his knowledge and wisdom. "It's an honor to have you at the Tsubwa clan, Mr. Spender. Originally, it was I who should be personally visiting you." Druffet's attitude was very much to Spender's satisfaction. As a matter of fact, both of them had already cooperated a long time ago, albeit secretively. They also earned quite a fortune from that cooperation. And today, for Druffet to become the godfather of the Tsubwa clan and hold the full power and authority of the syndicate in his hands, he was more than happy to get a step closer and be on friendly terms with him. "Godfather Druffet is really polite." Spender let out a faint smile. "My visit this time, on one hand, is to congratulate you in becoming the godfather of the Tsubwa clan and celebrate it, and on the other hand, is also to bring you a big gift." Druffet looked dazed for a second before he hastily asked, "Shall we continue our talk in my study room, Mr. Spender?" "Please." After the two men came to the over 200 square meters study room, Druffet poured out 2 glasses of red wine and he smilingly said, "May I know what kind of gift it is?" Spender sipped the red wine gently and then put it down before replying, "I'm going to be your recommender." Give me $100 million for the recommendation fee so that you can smoothly join the Stygian Club. Stygian Club? Druffet creased his brows and his expression turned a bit unsightly. Spender said he came to present him a gift, yet he turned out to be asking for money instead. Besides, what kind of club could possibly need another person to recommend him to enter with his current status? As if seemingly seeing through Druffet's mind, Spender elaborated with a light smile, "You're now the godfather of the Tsubwa clan, so your vision must be focused toward long-term benefits. Can you tell me which forces are included in the top 10 chart of the most powerful forces in the world today?" Druffet stared blankly at him as he knitted his brows and said, "In the whole world? I can't recall any. Since you don't know, then I'll tell you. The most powerful 10 forces in the world, of which the first 3 are the most terrifying ones." Spender let out a light smile. "The following 7 forces are a lot weaker than the first 3. Let me tell you the first 3 organizations first." Chapter 573, Sleeping While Standing. Spender knew Druffet very well. As far as someone who possessed a deep foundation was concerned, he needed to pull that person into his camp so as to go gain more power for himself in the organization. The first organization calls itself Pyramid, the second is the League of Archcrusaders, and the third is the Stygian Club. Thick ambition filled Spender's eyes as he named the 3 forces. He used his walking stick to knock on the floor before elaborating, "You don't need to know the Pyramid and League of Archcrusaders now. Even my knowledge pertaining to these 2 organizations is very limited. The Stygian Club I currently belong to is composed of secret forces from 39 countries all over the world. There are only 2 forces in Italy that have obtained the qualification to become one of its members, one of which is my faction and the other is the Maston family." Druffet deeply frowned and asked in a deep voice, "What are the benefits of joining this Stygian Club?" "Unceasing expansion of business, and taking control of small forces or families in the country," answered Spender. "I understand the unceasing expansion of business. However, I don't quite get what you mean by controlling small forces or families in the country," said Druffet. With a meaningful expression, Spender answered, "Let's take an analogy. If you eye a small power or a family and you want it to be under your Tsubwa clan, you can secretly point your blade against them. If you fear that you don't have what it takes to make them submit to you, then you can apply a request to the Stygian Club for aid. Be it financial or armed forces. In accordance with the rules, you only need to take out 1/10 of your faction's wealth and hand it over to the organization for its help." Druffet's pupils contracted, a horrified feeling surging inside his heart. He never imagined that there would exist such a terrifying organization in the world. With so many intricately interlinked powers, as well as such a horrifying monstrous power, wouldn't it be extremely difficult for the forces and families who were being targeted to resist them? "Give me some time. I need to think about this," said Druffet slowly after falling into silence for a long time. "This matter is very important, so perhaps you want to discuss it with the people in your Tsubwa clan before making a decision." Spender nodded with a smile. "You have plenty of time to consider it, and do look for me after making a decision. I'm looking forward to our cooperation in the future." "No problem." Druffet nodded silently. After seeing Spender off, Druffet fell into thought for a long time. Then, the handsome face of a young Oriental man appeared inside his mind. He spent several cigarettes before finally deciding to contact the Oriental Everlasting Feast Hall. After all, the other party was also a monstrously terrifying hidden force, and he needed to have a deeper relationship with them. It would be best if they could cooperate in other areas as well. Shanghai. Tang Xiao and Kong Xia calmly stood at the corner of a busy street while watching the 2 long queues that spanned for tens of meters, with smiles on their faces. The magnificent Tang Corporation's products had now been recognized by the people in the country, and their products were very popular, whether it was the cosmetics or the God's nectar. The advertising campaign of the healthcare products had started as early as 2 months ago, and now everyone in the entire country was already aware of the effect brought by the healthcare products. produced by the magnificent Tang Corporation. Nowadays, there were many rich people, yet those who were nearly hollowed in that aspect were even more. Therefore, the products that treated yin deficiency by reinforcing body fluid and nourishing the kidney to treat impotence drove everyone crazy. What do you think? Tang Xiu glanced at Kong Xia and smilingly asked. I was actually worried that the sales of our healthcare products would be quite difficult since no one has taken it, and that it has not secured a high level of trust yet. Kong Xia smilingly replied. But I never thought that there would be so many people lining up to buy it just from this branch store only. I think my presence is not required. You're right. It will make no difference if you're here or not. Tang Xiu said, the sales will go well even if you're not here. Anyhow, tell those people you brought here to stay and help. As for us, let's go back and wait for the news. Kong Xia assented and then made a phone call to send instructions. After which, she followed Tang Xiu back to the Blue Star Villa complex. Despite the sales in the Shanghai's exclusive store being so hot and greatly satisfying her, however, Kong Xia was not completely relieved and kept paying attention through the online live video, communicating with the senior executives of the magnificent Tang Corporation and asking their feedback. Tang Xiu himself did not stay at home with her, but went out due to someone's call. Under the classroom building of Shanghai University, Han Qingwu was sitting on the driver's seat of a red sedan, and her eyes looked somewhat hazy and blurred. It was very evident that she was somewhat depressed. She would only occasionally get back to her senses when she glanced at the direction of the campus gate with a look of expectation on her face. Knock. Knock. The front seat's door was knocked as Tang Xiu opened the door and entered. After looking at Han Qingwu's face when she turned around, he asked, when have you come back? I just returned yesterday, said Han Qingwu softly. Looking at her downcast expression, Tang Xiu asked curiously, what happened? Are you blaming me for not calling you back here together? No. Xiao Shui told me that you had go to Beijing due to an emergency and it was unknown when you would return to Shanghai. Han Qingwu shook her head. In that case, how come your mood is so bad? Asked Tang Xiu. Han Qingwu was silent for a moment before replying, last night, my parents kind of forced me to a blind date with the son of my father's old friend. He's a gentlemanly handsome man, a senior executive of a foreign multinational company, with over than 7 digits of annual salary. He also has a house and a car. But I couldn't figure out why. I didn't have any feeling toward him whatsoever. I even realized that I never felt that kind of sentimental feeling to any man, except you. This situation started after the Shanghai University's freshman welcoming party this year. Tang Xiu knitted his brows while pointing to his head and asked, is it because of the influence of those images in your head? It should be. But, Han Qingwu nodded. It's all right. You can tell me anything, said Tang Xiu. Actually, there's something that I haven't told you yet. Han Qingwu said bitterly, there are more than just those images appearing in my head. Your play at the freshman welcoming party that night also brought me to a new novel world, and I saw some unthinkable queer scenes and saw a man whose face I can't see, only his back. What kind of scene is it, exactly? Tang Xiu's complexion changed as he asked in a heavy voice. While covering her face and her chest, Han Qingwu replied with a faintly pale expression, I saw a woman whose looks are very much like mine, and she did something she regretted very much. And in that world that was as if facing a doomsday, the man whose face I can't see was being besieged and killed by many people. It's just like a segment of a magical genre movie, since that woman whose looks are almost identical to mine killed that man who she loved so dearly and regretted it, so much so that she committed suicide next to him. Committed suicide? Tang Xiu's heart shivered, and disbelief burst from his eyes. He knew perfectly well what was implied by Han Qingwu. The scene of the world that was like an eschatology should be the scene of him when facing the tribulation, and that scene of a man being besieged was himself surrounded by several people, his best friends, who joined together with Shui Qingcheng to attack him. But how could Shui Qingcheng commit suicide? Wasn't she supposed to be very happy at having successfully gotten the heavenly art of cosmic genesis and satiated her greed and selfish desire? I gotta go. I still have things to tend to. Tang Xiu's complexion was faintly pale. He looked like he had lost his soul as he pushed the door open and staggeringly walked in the direction of the campus gate. Despite Han Qingwu's effort to hastily get off the car and chase after him and her shouts calling him back, he didn't even look back. Suicide? The word was like a magical curse that flooded his heart, driving him to try to understand the reason. They were obviously in love, yet she pointed her blade at him. But when her objective had been achieved, she committed suicide. Tang Xiu returned to Blue Star Villa complex in a muddle-headed state. He didn't even glance at Kong Xia, who was in the study room, and went straight back to the bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed and started smoking without stopping. As the pack of cigarettes was about to be finished, the bedroom's door was pushed open, and then came Kong Xia's shocked scream. "Boss, why are you smoking so much?" Tang Xiu woke up from his confusion and stared at Kong Xia. He looked down at the cigarette, but that was about to burn out between his fingers. With the swinging pain, agony, bitter, and astringent feeling inside his heart, he extinguished the cigarette but in the ashtray as he dragged his body that was fully smelled of smoke toward Kong Xia. He hugged her. He didn't exert much strength, but he seemed to want to fuse Kong Xia into his body. The light and heat emanating out from her body seemed to illuminate his bewildered and confused heart. After a long time, Kong Xia looked up. She looked at Tang Xiu's pressed-down eyes and heard a slight snoring coming from him. A strange expression appeared on her extremely beautiful face. "Fell asleep? How come you fell asleep while standing?" She wanted to move, but Tang Xiu kept hugging her. Although the strength he used was much weaker than before, she was afraid she would wake him up. After hesitating, she maintained their standing position and let Tang Xiu continue hugging her. At the same time, she silently controlled the warm current in her body according to the root of energy in the cultivation technique imparted by Tang Xiu. A few minutes later, Kong Xia was surprised to find that, while being hugged by Tang Xiu and cultivating, she could feel a trace of a cool energy entering her body and finally flowing into her dantian. That warm stream traversed along her meridians and back to her dantian before it eventually fused into a whole. Time fleeted by. 2 hours later, Kong Xia, who was being hugged by Tang Xiu, was still maintaining her standing posture. But her surprise only got more and more intense, because the shocking discovery that her cultivation speed was a lot faster than when she practiced by herself. In just 2 hours, the flow of qi inside of her body had unexpectedly increased to twice the amount of before. The most inconceivable thing she felt was the fact that her control over qi was greatly improved now. Prior to this, she usually needed to fully focus and devote all her energy to circulate that warm stream. What exactly is happening? Is it because of Tang Xiu? The thought crossed her mind, but Kong finally pushed the thought to the back to her head. She didn't want to waste time. And since cultivating now brought about such a great effect, then she must seize every minute and second to cultivate. After all, Andy's strength now was very formidable, at least 10 times stronger than her. If she wasn't able to overtake her, she would find it difficult to raise her head before Tang Xiu later. Chapter 574, Fully Isolated and Assailed on All Sides. The sleeping and standing figure continued to hug Kong Xia. This time, the situation prolonged for a very long time, and only after 3 hours did Tang Xiu finally awake from his deep sleep. He could feel a cooling aura around him, and the first thing that came to his sight after he opened his eyes was Kong Xia's beautiful face. Did I fall asleep? Tang Xiu felt that it was a bit inconceivable. Kong Xia's immersion in cultivation was interrupted, as she opened her star-like pupils and smilingly said, "Yes. You fell asleep while standing." My state of confusion and bewilderment drove my mental state down. Tang Xiu revealed an awkward and wry smile. I didn't expect that. That's right, was the fluctuation of the world's spiritual energy caused by your cultivation? Blinking her eyes, Kong Xia released herself from Tang Xiu's hold and ran about 5 meters away to a clean spot and sat on it. 2 minutes later, she stood up with a dull expression and then looked at Tang Xiu with a face full of a puzzled expression, saying, It's strange. My cultivation speed was so fast when I was hugging you before. It was so fast to the extent that I don't know how many times it's compared to when I practice by myself. But after separating from you, my cultivation speed returned to its previous state. What did you say? Tang Xiu stared blankly before immediately asked with a surprised expression. My cultivation speed was very fast when I was being hugged you, but it turned very slow when we separated. Kong Xia said, the warm current inside my body has doubled within just a few hours and above all, my control over them has become easier. Tang Xiu looked down at himself and thought for a while before figuring out the reason. His present cultivation level was already very high, and it caused his body to constantly absorb the energy from the stars and the sun. Hence with the heaven and earth spiritual energy as a medium, the world energy around him became richer than elsewhere. While Kong Xia cultivated at his side, it was equivalent of practicing in a place where the spiritual energy was richer by many times, hence the reason why her cultivation speed was naturally faster. Immediately, after Tang Xiu explained the reason, Kong Xia was no longer shocked and felt happy instead. She kept pestering Tang Xiu, causing the latter to allow her to stay by his side more often later. That's right, how are the sales of our new products? Just as Tang Xiu remembered this matter, he quickly asked about it. A smile blossomed on Kong Xia's beautiful face upon hearing his question, as she replied with a sigh. The information relayed from our exclusive stores all over the country showed that the lowest sales rate from the slowest exclusive store had all the healthcare products sold out in only 2.5 hours. It seems Long Jinglin's idea was really great. Tang Xiu stared blankly and praised. This brat will surely run home to find his old man and ask his support given that he's in a very poor state recently. Anyhow, after you return to Star City, give him his dividend according to his share, and tell him that the next dividend will be shared by the end of the year. No problem. Kong Xia said with a smile, the magnificent Tang Corporation doesn't lack funds for the time being. Also, I've pressed and allocated some funds in our account book to be prepared for the Star City's new city real estate next year. Another big part of our funds are currently being spent on opening more production lines for several products. Since you're the one managing the business, I believe you can do it well. Tang Xiu said, anyways, since you are in Shanghai, how about we stroll around and look for a suitable place for the future HQ of our company? Kong Xia's eyes lit up and agreed. In the next 2 days, Kong Xia was very busy and was only able to snatch brief moments of leisure from work. She returned to Blue Star Villa Complex every night, and yet still dealt with work issues, holding video conferences with the top executives of the magnificent Tang Corporation. During the day, she followed Tang Xiu everywhere to find a good plot of land. Finally, the two saw a wide undeveloped area on the border of Shanghai City and Su region. Following which, Tang Xiu contacted the people from real estate sector in Shanghai and learned the estimated price to purchase the land, and the various legal procedures to complete the formalities. After that, Kong Xia transferred a batch of manpower from Star City and temporarily recruited some people skilled in real estate in Shanghai. She formed an ad hoc team that was solely responsible and had full authority to purchase the land. What made Tang Xiu and Kong Xia quite happy was that they were able to recruit a very famous real estate broker, Tang Chenghe, with the help of a headhunting company. In addition, the Jinda real estate's boss, Jin Xinkue, also contacted and used his wide network and connections before they were finally able to purchase a large area of land, at 1.98 billion yuan. Afterward, Tang Xiu gave the full authority to handle the matter to Kong Xia and Tang Chenghe, Whereas he returned to Shanghai University and back to his relaxed life, attending classes and going to the library every day. Beijing, the ancestral residence of the Tang family. More than a dozen core members of the Tang family had gathered here. Everyone was facing a mobile phone placed on the table in front of them with its loudspeaker volume turned to the maximum. Father, the news spread out quickly, and all the forces and various big families that had been directly oppressed or suffered a lot of losses by the Yao family are all in secret contact with each other. As of now, the entire capital is very calm and tranquil, but surging undercurrents are brewing in secret. I'm sure that within a matter of days, those parties will strike the Yao family following the death of Yao Qingzuan and the losses of their family's strength. Tang Yunping's fingers clamped a lighted cigarette. Though he spoke like that in his mouth, yet his mind was full of admiration toward his nephew. He had never expected that the Tang family could have any relations to cultivators whatsoever prior to this. But now, not only did the Tang family have the relationship with such existences, even his nephew was a cultivator himself, and also groomed over 100 cultivators. He felt that such a huge force was enough to sweep away all the forces in China. In particular, the smile on Tang Guoxing's face was also very bright. The Yao and Tang families were sworn mortal enemies, and all the families with a bit of power in the country were also aware of the situation between them. The news of the Tang family having devastated the Yao family's forces and compelled Yao Qingzuan to death had naturally spread out, and created a sensation. The Tang family, however, did not announce any news to the outside, whereas the information on the documents pertaining the deeds of the Yao family was released by Tang Yunqing in secret. They could even guarantee that no one from those families and forces would be able to investigate and trace the source back to the Tang family. Those people don't want us to ruthlessly eradicate the Yao family, hence we'll stay idle on our boat amid the storm and calmly watch the tense situation in the capital. The Yao family, to cut a grass without roots will only need the coming breeze of the spring. God knows what kind of talented people will spring up in the Yao family, but who knows to what extent they can slowly restore themselves in this situation. Everyone knows that keeping this family in existence is akin to keeping a disaster alive. You're right, big brother. Tang Guoxiu repeatedly nodded. The Yao family has too deep a foundation, hence we must cut off their rear as far as possible so that they won't be able to recover from this situation. Even after resorting to using that information, had the Yao family not been that powerful for so many years and many of their family members not having offended and strong-armed too many people before, I'm afraid that no one would be willing to take the initiative to stand up against the Yao family at all. Tang Guoxing sighed, when heaven sends calamities down, there's hope of weathering them, but when a man brings them upon himself, there's no hope of escaping them whatsoever. Amid the conversation between the three elders of the Tang family, the mobile phone in front of Tang Guoxing suddenly rang. Speak. After looking at the caller's name, Tang Guoxing immediately spoke in a loud voice. Senior Tang, a junior of the Yao family, Yao Xindi, was gravely injured by a junior from the Wang family and was taken to the hospital for treatment. At the same time, Yao Xindi's father, Yao Qingheng, was hit by a speeding car on the roadside near a specialties store and shouldn't be able to be rescued. A deep and low voice transmitted from the phone. Tang Guoxing's pupils contracted and he was silent for 2 minutes, before he slowly replied, "Keep watching. I need to know all the news about the Yao family firsthand." Understood. After hanging up, Tang Guoxing looked at the others and spoke. The first family has finally jumped out to strike the Yao family. Yao Qingheng was hit by a car, and his son Yao Xindi was severely beaten by a junior from the Wang family. It seems that the Wang family is the one who hates the Yao family the most aside from us. Interesting, this is really interesting. Tang Guoxing laughed strangely. I once heard that Yao Qingheng had a grudge with that kid from the Wang family during the construction of Jinhua Shopping Center, and several clashes broke out between them after that. I have a feeling that the Wang family doesn't have the courage to directly clash with the Yao family alone. Perhaps they have collaborated with one or more other families. Let's wait, I'm sure that soon some people will jump out and strike at the Yao family. Sure enough, another incident occurred less than an hour after Yao Qingheng was hit by a car and Yao Xindi was beaten. An upscale club on the 4th Ring Road in Beijing suddenly caught on fire. An important member who was responsible for the venue was killed in the fire along with 7 or 8 experts of the Yao family, and 2 of their financial accountants. Following that, a few group companies under the Yao family's flag were allegedly held responsible for tax evasion and defrauding their revenues, and were forced to pay rectification. Some were closed down after failing to pass the required fire control measures standard after the inspection from the Fire Control Bureau. Some project sites under the Yao family were also heavily inspected and checked for serious quality problems. The workers were driven away and the construction sites were sealed up. Series of measures were then employed, giving heavy blows to the Yao family. These news flew like snowflakes to the Tang family. In just 2 days, the losses suffered by the Yao family were enormous. It was heard that the new head of the Yao family, Yao Chengdong, even had his hairs turned white overnight due to worry and restlessness. Tang Xiu, who was in Shanghai, had been following the situation in the capital as well. When the Tang family first began their assault on the Yao family, he already guessed that the Yaos wouldn't be able to pass this hurdle. As far as enemies were concerned, Tang Xiu never had any mercy. Had it not been because of the urging from his grandfather, he wouldn't have to borrow others' knives for killing and eradicating the Yao family. But seeing such a colossal force begin to crack without wasting an ounce of his strength, he was still delighted nonetheless. Shanghai University's male students' dormitory. When Tang Xiu hung up in a good mood, Hu Qingsong suddenly ran inside. When he saw Tang Xiu sitting in front of the bookcase, he immediately asked, "Big bro, Tang, I'm gonna buy something outside. Are you coming with me?" "What are you going to buy?" asked Tang Xiu. Hu Qingsong grinned, "Don't ask, all right? I'm very happy now, so are you coming with me or not? I guarantee you will definitely be satisfied." Tang Xiu put away his phone as he got up and smilingly said, "Since you said that, then I'll go with you. Beware, though. If the place doesn't satisfy me, then dinner's gonna be on you." "No problem." Hu Qingsong straightened up his chest and guaranteed. Chapter 575, Foul Taste. Shanghai's Wanchuan Shopping Center was located at the most flourishing commercial street in Hongkou District. It was also known as the Fortune Plaza, and every store opened in it was an itinerary of high-end international brands. In addition to a large number of luxury goods, they also provided many major brands in the world. Hu Qingsong drove here with Tang Xiu and headed straight to the clothing area on the 4th floor. When they approached a world-famous branded clothing store, Hu Qingsong did not even pause for half a second and straightly went toward a female underwear exclusive store at the back, before he then stopped and hesitated. "Old Hu, don't tell me the place you said would satisfy me is here?" Tang Xiu was dumbfounded as he looked at the dazzling lineup of lingeries inside. The sight was virtually dazzling to the eyes, especially those sexy lingerie with various colors and styles, making Tang Xiu secretly blush and feel embarrassed inside. Never once, either in this life nor in his past life, had he ever been to this kind of place. With an awkward expression, Hu Qingsong said, "Recently I approached a girl, and only yesterday did I finally win her heart. It just so happens that tomorrow is her birthday, so I want to give her a gift, an out-of-the-ordinary one. Hence, Yukai told me to give her a sexy lingerie." Cough. Cough. Tang Xiu was really knocked out by Hu Qingsong this time. That rotten apple Yukai went so far so as to provide such a rotten advice. Did he think that such an idea was really out of the box or something? If he knew earlier that Hu Qingsong would drag him to this kind of place, he wouldn't have come here even if he was bribed with 100 meals. At this time, the lingerie brand called Corinne Gilson sold exclusively an European luxury underwear brand. The founder is an haute couture designer from Belgium who founded the lingerie brand of the same name in 1994. Because she was particular about the choice of materials, she only chose the finest fabrics from Lyons and Calais, France. Most of the classic products of Corinne Gilson were often presented in feminine soft colors such as rust, scarlet, orange, cappuccino, and old rose. In addition, its price was also very expensive, starting at $240, and with a set of nightgown priced over $360. After walking to the entrance of the store, Hu Qingsong hesitated. Tang Xiu himself really wanted to turn around and leave, but after looking at Hu Qingsong's face, he steeled himself against the women's strange looks and said, "Old Hu, if you really want to buy a set of lingerie for your girlfriend, just go and buy it. You're a man, for God's sake. If anything, you have nothing else but a thick face, no? I won't go inside with you, but you have my full support, mentally and spiritually. Anyways, I'm kind of addicted to smoking, so I'm gonna find a spot to smoke and wait for you there." Hu Qingsong was kind of dumbstruck, and he couldn't even sense the smell of deserting from battle from Tang Xiu at all. He steeled his heart and blocked Tang Xiu's path and dragged him into the store. "Welcome, sirs." A beautiful female sales clerk greeted them with a professional smile. She seemed accustomed to seeing men patronizing the lingerie store, as she enthusiastically spoke with a warm smile. "These two gentlemen, I'm the head sales clerk of the shop. What kind of underwear do you want to buy? Also, may I take the liberty to ask you whether you want to give it as a present?" With an awkward expression, Hu Qingsong said, "My girlfriend's birthday is tomorrow. I think. I don't really understand what kind of underwear a girl would like, could you recommend me some?" The female clerk took the two of them further inside. While keeping her smile, she asked, "How old is your girlfriend? May I know her size?" With the clerk's inquiries, Hu Qingsong responded with all the little knowledge he had. Tang Xiu spent some effort to hide himself at the side. He wanted to take out a cigarette to disperse his embarrassment, but then saw the "No smoking" sign on the front of the shop, hence he could only resentfully look for a sofa to sit. "Big sis, did you see them? The youth over there and the one who's sitting in front us. They both came to this lingerie shop to buy some underwear. Do you think they are gay or something?" A fashionable young and pretty girl who was standing nearby whispered to her friend. "It's unlikely, I think. That guy should be accompanying the other one to buy a lingerie for his sweetheart, don't you think? But, that guy sitting there is very handsome, and kinda looks familiar."
Yeah.
"You're right. I also think so. Where have I seen him before? He's so gorgeous. Shall we ask him to take a group picture? What do you think? Maybe a talent scout from an entertainment company will discover him someday, and after they excavate and train him, he'll eventually become a big star." "A big star? Heavens. I remember him. He's Tang Xiu, a freshman at Shanghai University. He's the one who played the zither and sang a song at this year's Shanghai's freshman welcoming party." "That's right. I remember that he's also a doctor, that young divine doctor from Star City Chinese Medical Hospital." "Ah, I remember it, too. But how did he?" The conversation between the two girls became louder and was heard by many women in the shop. In just a few minutes, everyone inside, including 7 female sales clerks, directly approached Tang Xiu and had him surrounded while whispering to each other. Some of the bolder ones even looked enthusiastic and eager, hoping to could get close to him. Chen Xiaowan had been in a bad mood recently. She worked in an HRD of a large multinational corporation. She was fair-skinned, rich, and beautiful, the epitome of Miss Perfect and ideal woman, who not only had a very strong wit and good head, but also possessed wide network and personal connections. In the eyes of countless women, she was a high-profile successful woman. Despite thinking so, however, she caught her boyfriend having an affair with her good friend red-handedly. She was a proud woman, and being betrayed was very difficult for her to bear. However, she didn't cry nor vent out her anger over it, and neither did she want to find a rope to hang herself, but rather endured her pained heart and gave them her blessing and left. If the matter had ended there, she wouldn't have felt bad for so long. What blew her away was that her unfaithful wretched boyfriend came and meekly apologized to her, asking for her forgiveness as humbly and pitifully as he could. However, because she didn't give him what he wished for, his attitude turned 180 degrees. Not only did he insult her, he even demanded that she pay compensation under the justification that she had caused psychological damage and the loss of his youth. After Chen Xiaowan flatly refused his demand, she reported it as a threat to the police, and finally, she ditched her boyfriend. Nevertheless, the anguish and the feeling of being wronged still remained in her heart, and she spent 10.5 days nesting in her home. Her holiday was then about to end, so she went out shopping. However, when she stepped into this Corinne Gilson exclusive store and saw the scene inside, she suddenly furrowed her brows and planned to turn away and leave. But when she stepped out of the store, by a curious coincidence, she saw her wretched ex-boyfriend's hand coiled over the waist of an obese woman in her 40s. Looking at this intimate scene almost made her spit out in disgust. Hide. This was the truest portrayal of what was inside Chen Xiaoshuan's heart. Therefore, her feet that were already stepping out feet shrunk back, as she leaned toward the crowd inside. "Hi handsome, can we take a group picture with you?" Finally, a bolder woman finally scrounged up the courage to ask Tang Xiu, anticipation and hope painted on her face. Tang Xiu had heard their conversation just now. But he didn't expect that someone would really come to ask him to take a group picture. After glancing at the sexy lingeries on both sides, Tang Xiu didn't even lift his bottom but forced a wry smile and said, "Big sis, taking a picture here is kinda inappropriate, right?" The woman stared blankly before she suddenly remembered where they were. She suddenly blushed red beet. I'm really embarrassed. How about we go outside and take a group picture? I know that you're the young divine Dr. Tang Xiu, and also a student celebrity from Shanghai University. Being able to take a group picture with a talented and handsome young man such as you will surely be great. Cough. Cough. Tang Xiu was really not willing to take a picture with this woman. Though this woman was beautiful, with his intelligence he could naturally guess that if he took a picture with her, this woman would keep pestering him, attracting more attention from the public. It was even more likely that the news that he was escorting his classmate to buy a lingerie would also explode on the internet. Fate may perhaps be preordained by heaven. As Tang Xiu was somewhat at a loss what to do, a very loud voice came from the outside, and that voice belonging to a woman who appeared to be coaxing someone. "Honey, this Corinne Gilson lingerie looks great. Several of these sexy lingeries are very beautiful. Tell me, do you want me to buy a couple of sets and show them to you when we get back?" "Great, you will definitely look beautiful whatever you put on." Yu Zigang, who was being dragged by an obese middle-aged woman, had a false smile on his face that was in stark contrast with his feelings. As he visualized the appearance of this fat woman on a sexy lingerie, gooseflesh were raised all over his body. If it weren't for this woman being very rich and so liberal in spending her money, he would have kicked her away a long time ago and then looked for another woman. "You really have a sweet mouth, honey." The obese woman was so overjoyed that she wanted to kiss him. But since her height was less than 1.6 meters and Yu Zigang was 1.8 plus meters, even if she tried to stand on her tiptoes, she wouldn't be able to do so. Hence, she hurriedly pulled his arm and made him squat. Yu Zigang took a glance at the store and saw that the women there did not look back at all. He quickly let out a false smile and squatted down while offering his lips. Smooch. After a loud kiss, the obese woman walked inside with a happy face. Both Yu Zigang and the woman had not yet discovered that among the crowd inside, a woman, Chen Xiaowan, had been secretly observing both of them and felt like she was about to vomit out of disgust. A moment after, Yu Zigang entered the store behind the obese woman. Although Chen Xiaowan had tried all she could to avoid them, she was still spotted by him. As for Yu Zigang, He suddenly had a wonderful idea and thought that it was a smart move to show how outstanding he was in front of the obese woman. He immediately hugged her and intentionally shouted, "Whoops, aren't you Chen Xiaowan, who just got ditched by me? Why? Why are you here at this upscale lingerie store? Are you here to buy something?"